Hello everybody and welcome back to Law and Court Cases. In light of the new Netflix adapted series Griselda, in today's video I thought we would talk about Griselda Blanco, otherwise known as the Queenpin and the Godmother. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Griselda Blanco was born in Cartagena, Colombia in 1943. They didn't stay there long though, as Griselda's mother, Ana Blanco, moved the two to Medellin, Colombia when she was just 3 years old. Medellin exposed Blanco to the criminal world very quickly. She was surrounded by drug dealers, prostitution and killers living within what was considered the city's red light district. Supposedly, Griselda began her criminal ways through pickpocketing, prostitution at just a young age, but things quickly escalated. Allegedly, at the age of 11, she kidnapped a boy, her own age, holding him for ransom, and when his parents did not take the young girl's threat seriously, she took his life. At the age of just 13, Griselda gets a boyfriend, Carlos Trujillo, an older man who was a pimp and a document forger. Over a span of 5 years, he taught Griselda how to forge documents, and through this she became quite the expert at faking identities. This act was used to smuggle thousands of people into the United States. By 19 years old, Carlos and Griselda are married and the couple have 3 sons and spend their time divided between Colombia and New York. In 1970, Carlos died suddenly and some deemed suspiciously of liver failure, but it did not take long for Griselda to move on. Carlos had served his purpose to Griselda, so she goes on to be involved with another gangster, Alberto Bravo. Unlike her former husband, Bravo smuggles cocaine instead of people. In this activity, Blanco sees there is serious money being made in the States and begins to plan to expand on Bravo's small-time smugglers ring and expand it into a drug empire in the US. In 1973, they moved to New York to begin their plan. With ties left from her first operations with her deceased husband, Griselda already had a network of people at her disposal ready to go to work for her once again. After having cocaine smuggled into Colombia, Griselda instructed garments to be made using Alberto Bravo's clothing import company to store the cocaine. Garments, predominantly bras and girdles, that were used to hold the illegal substance, allowed it to blend in easier with the body's natural figure. She chose Colombian women as drug mules and instructed them to flaunt their sexuality as a means to distract the border guards and get the products she wanted so desperately into the country. Each drug mule held a kilo of cocaine and would sell for $10,000 in net profit. The duo were making millions, not just from their drug kingdom in the States, but also due to their connections that still lay in Colombia. They have 1,500 dealers. They held large consignments that were then flown directly from Colombia on aircraft that the duo hired. They came through the Medellin cartel, one of which was flown by Blanco's old friend, Pablo Escobar, another famous drug lord and kingpin. Blanco's dealers worked quickly. Within hours of the planes touching down in New York, her product was on the streets of Queens. The growing drug epidemic that was sweeping the city caught the attention of local police and DEA agents. Due to the growing issue, they were sent on the streets to gather evidence of the dealers in hopes of finding the source of this operation. This operation was called Operation Banshee. Agent Robert Nieves and Bob Palumbo investigated as part of the operation. After 2 years of working the case, the duo picked up a small-time drug dealer. When threatened with 30 years in prison, he decided to talk and revealed his supplies to be another woman within the organisation called Lila Parada. Although this information did not reveal Blanco, they knew Parada could in fact do that for them. While she was out, they wired her apartment in hopes of learning further information. What they captured were fake names and Spanish jargon used to disguise their conversations. However, one alias that they retrieved was linked to a woman named Carmen Caban, who also happened to already be in police custody. In exchange for placement in witness protection and seeing her family again, Carmen decided to talk, revealing key players and the godmother herself, Griselda Blanco, to be behind the growing drug trade. Provided with an ID, the agents were now able to indict Blanco for her crimes of drug trafficking. However, unsure of what she looked like, it made the case very difficult. Using her skills of forging passports and legal documents, Blanco used fake documents to enter and leave the country every time, and after catching wind that the DEA were finding out the truth about this operation, Blanco fled back to Colombia and away from their jurisdiction. Griselda did not have many friends, but she had made enemies. And during this time, some of these friends did in fact turn on her, one being the famous kingpin himself, Pablo Escobar. He was not afraid of Blanco like others and moved in on her territory. Later known in his life as the King of Cocaine and the wealthiest criminal in history, he was indeed a threat to Griselda. By 1975, the duo were no longer friends and instead were trying to kill one another. Griselda was brutal, and during this time when her drug empire was under threat, she decided she needed to up the ante and show this in a brutal show of force, developing her signature style of assassination known as the motorcycle drive-by. It allowed assassins to kill their targets whilst on the move. For a time, this method did work. It kept Escobar at bay, but it did not stop the killing, as she relished in this. Believing rumours that Bravo was skimming profits and also having an affair, Blanco confronted him and the pair ended up in a shootout. Both parties were shot, Blanco in the stomach, however she would go on to survive her injuries whilst Bravo did not. This action earned her the nickname the Black Widow. Despite this terrifying reputation that now loomed over her, her old rival, Pablo Escobar, was still hell-bent on weakening Griselda's hold on the US and as a queenpin. Using brute force and bribery, Escobar is able to secure Medellin airport as his own, stopping Blanco's main export route. Now feeling pushed out of her own country, Blanco once again flees, leaving back to the States, this time setting up in Miami, Florida. After 3 years of working Operation Banshee, agents believed that the case had gone cold. However, leads coming out of Miami provided Robert and Bob with new leads, and this time they would finally have a face to go with the name, after informants revealed multiple aliases used by Blanco's to customs officials. In 1979, the Cocaine Cowboys, a group who carried out killings with Blanco's signature style, hit a liquor store in broad daylight, taking out members of a rival gang and brutally injuring 2 store employees. Local police and DEA agents in Miami began to believe that Blanco was beginning to set up gang wars between herself and her rivals. Despite this evidence, the Miami Police Department did not have the resources at this time to properly execute a plan to stop Griselda. In 1982, the police believed they finally had their confirmation that Griselda Blanco was in fact behind the increase in drug trade and gang violence in the Miami area. Detective Nelson Andrew was called to the home of a Colombian family, the Lorenzos, cocaine dealers. A gruesome shooting had taken place. It was clear the victims had tried to run from the shooter but had failed. Both victims were restrained and tortured before being killed. They had both been shot at least 3 or 4 times in the torso and head. Believed to be a revenge killing, the DEA were confident that Blanco had returned, more dangerous than ever. During her time in Miami, it is said that Griselda ordered as many as 200 revenge killings. When she arrived in Florida, Griselda once again found love. Dario Sepulveda was Blanco's 3rd husband. Dario was initially a hitman, known in the crime circle as a hired assassin. He met Blanco in 1978 when he was ordered to kill her, but the hired gun fell in love with his target instead. Apparently they married the same year and welcomed a son, Blanco's 4th child and youngest. They named the child after Al Pacino's character in The Godfather, Michael Corleone. At the time, Blanco's business was doing very well, so the family lived a lavish lifestyle. Each month, 3,400 pounds of cocaine were being moved into the country. Her drug empire spanned across the US and made Griselda $80 million monthly. But her marriage to Dario was not to last, as Dario left Griselda in 1983. Ferociously jealous, Blanco had up to 8 strippers killed because she thought that her husband had been sleeping with them. Her brutal nature even extended to the girlfriend of one of her sons, whose father was murdered because she dumped Griselda's boy. In 1983, after Dario left Griselda, he'd also kidnapped their son Michael and returned to Colombia. It's been reported that Dario did not want Michael involved in the drug life. But Griselda would not let her son go without a fight. When the gunman found Dario in his car, they shot him, as his son Michael was sitting and watching. Michael was then returned to Griselda. The DEA used information gathered on where Griselda was building and running operations from. Informants disclosed that she had her 3 eldest sons, Osvaldo, Uber and Dixon, set up in her 3 major areas of distributions, San Francisco, Los Angeles and Miami. Believed at this point that Griselda had so many enemies, the only people she could trust were her own flesh and blood. In 1983, Bob Palumbo got the opportunity that he had been working towards for 10 years at this point. A Colombian man named Jerry Gomez is behind bars and knows the Blanco sons, having met back in Medellin from working in a motorcycle shop where he sold them motorcycles. Believed to be a credible match, DEA knew that the Blancos would not do any business with a stranger. Given the task of making connections with just one of the 3 sons was all they needed to do. Gomez expressed a desire to launder money for them. The DEA hoped they could gather enough intel to find Griselda and the other two brothers. Gomez managed to make a connection with Dixon Blanco, the youngest boy. Whilst wearing a wire, Dixon exposes that his mother moved frequently between Miami and LA, and originally seemed to like Gomez's proposition of laundering money for him, but he would be left to wait for a further 3 weeks for confirmation. This confirmation would come from Griselda herself. She agrees to take Gomez up on his offer, taking the bait set by the DEA. The pair set up a meeting in a hotel in LA. Once situated, Gomez enters the hotel. He was once again wired and awaiting Blanco's arrival. Once there, Blanco took Gomez to a hotel room. Caught on tape, the DEA heard Gomez quickly begin to fall apart. Fearful for his life and on edge from being so close to the Black Widow, Griselda decided she was not going to trust Gomez with any part of her operation, and the DEA considered this a failure. Using the information they could pull from Gomez's wired conversations, the DEA were able to maintain information about an LA distributor, for which they received a warrant to enter. Evidence gathered from the search included a utility bill from an apartment in an upscale area of LA. They believed this would be the place that Griselda would use to lay low. Acting quickly, the agents set up a stakeout operation outside the Irvine apartment to confirm it was in fact Griselda's residence. Once confirmed, backup was called in and they entered, arresting her. Within months of Blanco's arrest, her 3 eldest sons were also captured in sting operations, landing them in prison. Griselda was returned to New York, where she was charged with drug trafficking convictions and served 13 years of her 15-year sentence for her crimes in a federal prison. In 1994, she was once again put on trial, but this time in Florida, and this time the charges were for murder. During this time, a sex scandal was revealed between the witness and prosecution, so they were left with no choice but to cut Griselda a deal, adding only 7 years to her sentence. In 2004, Griselda was released and deported back to Colombia. Griselda then remained under the radar for 5 years after her deportation. On September 3rd, 2012, in Medellin, Griselda became the victim of her own method of assassination, being gunned down before an assassin fled via motorcycle. She died at the age of 69. This is the story of Griselda Blanco, a ruthless queenpin and drug lord who lived up to her reputation. I wanted to do this video in light of the new Netflix series titled Griselda that has been released. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please leave a like and comment. I hope my pronunciation of names and places weren't too terrible, and if they were, I do apologise. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.